I will call to order a meeting of the Wilsonville City Budget Committee on May 19th at 6:02 p.m. And I would like to ask the city recorder to do a roll call, please.
Member Carr?
Here.
Member Bunn?
Here. Here.
Member Lagarza?
Here.
Member Ham?
Here.
Member O'Neill?
Here.
Councillor West?
I'm here.
Councillor Linville?
Here.
Councillor Lehan?
Here.
Council President Aukervall?
Here.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Here. I would like to ask the city manager to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I'm open to a motion to approve the order of agenda.
Your Honor, I move to approve the order agenda of agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is moved and seconded. All in favor of approving of the order of agenda, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you. I'm going to ask the city manager or city recorder on a procedural question again. Am I going to, at the last meeting, it was the end of the last budget committee, but I believe now we want to elect Mr. Carr as chair?
Yes, so you could ask for a nomination and somebody could nominate Andrew. And then if there's other names that people want to consider, they can do that too.
Okay. And thank you everyone for giving me grace on this. It was a pretty busy, long day and I did not see that email. So I am open to a nomination from this group for a chair of the budget committee. Please raise your hand if you'd like to make a nomination. Member O'Neill.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that Member Carr be our chair for this budget committee.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Do I have a second?
Your Honor, I'll second that motion.
Mr. Andrew Carr has been nominated. The nomination has been seconded to have him as chair of our budget committee. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Carr. Chair Carr, I will ask you to take the meeting from here.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes from the fiscal year 2021 Budget Committee. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. So city recorder, did you get who said aye? And
The last person?
did you get how many people said aye to that? And how many, did we have any that abstain?
Chair Carr?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Sean O'Neill. I'm abstaining.
Okay.
Okay. Member O'Neill has abstained. Do we have anybody that is voting opposed? Okay, so that would be 9-0 with one abstain. Is that correct?
Correct.
8, 9, and yeah, okay. As we move along to the next agenda item, it's the state shared revenue. I would like to call to order the Wilsonville Budget Committee hearing on the proposed state shared revenues in the city of Wilsonville's fiscal year 2021-2022 at 6:07 p.m. Bang gavel. Ladies and gentlemen, the Budget Committee will be taking public testimony tonight at the public hearing. The hearing will be conducted in the following manner. First, testimony by proponents, opponents, and those neither in favor or against the proposed fiscal year budget. Secondly, staff will present their report. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and Governor Brown's emergency order, this meeting is being held remotely by Zoom. Information regarding how the public could attend this meeting remotely and give testimony is posted at City Hall, and was also timely published in the Wilsonville Spokesman, and is also posted on the city's website, shown on the screen. Notice was given that testimony could be submitted for the record in advance, in writing by email or mailing it to the city recorder. If you are listening to this meeting remotely, when the time for public testimony is called, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom or press *9 on your telephone if you would like to testify. If you prefer and have not already done so, you may also submit written testimony by email at any time before the public hearing is closed by emailing the city recorder at the email address now being shown on the screen. Any testimony sent by email will be read into the record. Please include your name and mailing address with your email testimony. If you are having difficulties with these instructions, you may call the number shown on the screen and enter webinar ID number shown on the screen when prompted, which you see there. When called up to testify, state your full name and address for the record. I request from those providing testimony not to repeat testimony that has already been given to the Budget Committee. Simply indicating that you agree with the prior testimony given by a speaker you identify is sufficient. Do we have anyone wishing to testify?
No, we have no one in the virtual lobby.
We have no one in the virtual lobby. All right, thank you for that. I would then ask that staff make the presentation on state shared revenue.
Good evening and welcome, Budget Committee, to our fiscal year 21-22 budget presentation. And we'll kick off the evening with our state shared revenue public hearing. These are revenues that are collected by the state of Oregon and are reallocated to cities based on their population, as long as that they handle or provide at least 4 of the services that are noted on the screen. The city obviously provides everything except for fire protection, so we are eligible for these particular revenues. The largest one is our gas tax revenue. This is nearly $2 million is budgeted for next fiscal year. This, of course, is the primary revenue source for our road operating fund. The other $800,000 the city will be receiving is divided into liquor tax, state revenue sharing, and cigarette tax. And this money is recorded in our general fund and is used primarily for going towards the police contract. Those are our state shared revenues, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer anything. Okay, thank you.
Can I have quick way to jump in?
Councilor West.
Are we raising our hand or are we using the
You can
hand
use
feature?
the hand raise feature.
Use the hand raise feature, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I will do that next time. Just quick clarification, state shared revenues, are property taxes not included in that? Are they not, does the state collect those and then allocate them back to the cities, or?
No, not property taxes. Those are collected by the county.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And do we have no other public testimony?
We have no public testimony, Chair Carr.
No public testimony. Excellent. Well then, thank you. The public hearing on the proposed state shared revenues in the city of Wilsonville's fiscal year 2021-2022 budget is now closed. Bang gavel.
Okay,
And
we closed the public hearing for the state share revenue. Then you have to open it for the proposed budget, and that stays open until we're completed on night 2.
Yes, correct. Thank you. And that's the next item on the agenda, 5. So I call to order the Wilsonville Budget Committee public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2021-2022 City of Wilsonville budget and possible uses of state shared revenues as reflected in the City of Wilsonville's fiscal year 2021-2022 budget at 6:13 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, the Budget Committee will be taking public testimony tonight at the public hearing. The hearing will be conducted in the following manner. First, testimony by proponents, opponents, and those neither in favor or against the proposed fiscal year budget. Secondly, staff will present their report. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and Governor Brown's emergency order, this meeting will be held remotely by Zoom. Information regarding how the public could attend this meeting remotely and give testimony is posted at City Hall and was also timely published in the Wilsonville Spokesman and is also posted on the city's website, shown on the screen. Notice was given and that testimony could be submitted for the record in advance in writing by email or mailing it to the city recorder. If you are listening to this meeting remotely, when the time for public testimony is called, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom or press *9 on your telephone if you would like to testify. If you prefer and have not already done so, you may also submit written testimony by email at any time before the public hearing is closed by emailing the city recorder at the email address now being shown on the screen. Any testimony sent by email will be read into the record. Please include your name and mailing address with your email testimony. If you are having difficulties with these instructions, you may call the number shown on the screen and enter your webinar ID number shown on the screen when prompted. When called up to testify, please state your full name and address for the record. I request from those providing testimony not to repeat testimony that has already been given to the Budget Committee. Simply indicating you agree with a prior testimony given by a speaker you identify is sufficient. Is there anyone wishing to testify?
We have no one identifying, wishing to testify. Chair Carr.
Thank you. Just a note that we will have the urban renewal at the end of tomorrow night. And I just wanted to give a couple of words here myself to Brian, to Kathy, and Keith, and city staff. I've been a citizen here for 18 years. I think the work that we do and you have done on this budget and the fiscal responsibility that you provided us, while at the same time making it a livable, vibrant, sustainable, and economically viable city, can't be said enough, especially what we've survived this last year and how city staff has responded. I applaud each and every one of you. The urban renewal agencies, I think, have been fabulous for this city, and I hope the state doesn't take that away from us. So that's my individual testimony. Do we have anybody else on the committee that wants to talk before we turn it over to staff? All right, staff, take it away.
Me?
There you go.
I guess it's up to me now. So before I start in, I'm not going to obviously go into detail on the budget message. I hope you had a chance to review that. I think it really reflects kind of everything we've gone through over the last 15 months. So it was a challenge, but fun to write, and I have to give my ghostwriter, Mr. Katko, a lot of credit for that. I threw in a few quotes and made a few edits, but he did the lion's share of that work, and it was I felt it was spot on for everything we've gone through over the last year and a half or so. I also want to let you know that I think we're getting really close to being able to have and invite our boards and commissions back into City Hall. We received some late this afternoon, some news from OHA and OSHA that have given us some pretty clear guidance on how we can do that. So you can expect an email either from our HR department or the staff members that liaise to our various boards and commissions. For us to be able to do that, we're gonna have to have proof of vaccination. And then there's gonna be some other requirements. So you look forward to hearing from staff on that issue. The sooner we can get folks back in here, the better it will be for everyone, I think. These meetings are a lot more fun when we can interact and break bread and enjoy each other's company in person. As much as we've all gotten accustomed and good at these Zoom meetings, there's no substitute for human interaction. So with that said, I'm just going to high-level overview the budget message. As I stated, we've had a lot thrown at us over the last 15 months. A pandemic, wildfires, and most recently a crippling ice storm. While we're going to be talking a lot, a lot about numbers over the next few nights, it's important to remember that municipal budgets are really about programs, services, and people. We cannot respond at a high level without the support and guidance from the City Council and Budget Committee. Early on during the pandemic, we made a conscious decision to have our employees show up every day to continue providing services to the best of our ability, all while keeping employee and resident safety as the highest priority. And we truly did a head-swimmingly number of program adjustments in every department in our city. And I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but there was literally in the first 4 weeks of the pandemic, we were meeting every day in the EOC, probably 7 days a week, making adjustments to every program and service that we provide. There was just a lot of decisions that had to be made. We also came together early on as an executive team and reduced budgets to give City Council as many resources as possible to respond to community needs. With those savings, we're able to implement administrative and engineering controls to keep our employees and residents safe. We also provided council the resources they needed to provide additional support for Wilsonville community sharing programs and services, and we're able to stand up a small business relief grant program that provided direct aid to hundreds of Wilsonville businesses. As we emerge from this pandemic, the city is in great position to move forward and thrive into the future. The City Council just conducted a 2-day goal-setting session, and we are primed and poised to deliver on that vision. Staff will continue to provide a high level of service to our residents and businesses as our community recovers from COVID and the recent ice storm. Lastly, I want to acknowledge tonight that this is Kathy Rodacher's last budget presentation. Kathy has been a dedicated member of the city's finance team for nearly 2 decades. She's retiring in June and will begin her new full-time, unpaid, but totally way more satisfying job as grandmother. I know that I speak for everyone, and I say thank you, Kathy, for your commitment and contributions to Wilsonville. I wish you nothing but good health and happiness in your next adventure.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I guess that's me. I'm Keith Katko, the Assistant Finance Director, and I just have 8 slides to share with you tonight to get us going, and this is a high-level presentation similar to the budget message, but should illuminate some of the major changes and trends in the city's budget. So please stop me anywhere along the line to ask any questions financial related, and we'll try to answer it on the spot or get back to you, or we may hold it until we drill down deeper in the night at the program expenditure section or in the CIP section. So as we go along, just feel free to answer any questions or ask any questions.
I think Member Bunn has a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'd like to deal with the elephant in the room before we get much further, and I don't want to sound contrary or negative. But it's something I'm uncomfortable with. And that's the fact that, one of the questions I submitted to, I'm sorry, I I do want to echo the response of Chairman Carr and also City Manager Cosgrove on the great job that finance team has done, and Kathy Rodecker, congratulations to you, and I hope you enjoy your new full-time job as a grandmother. You certainly have done yeoman work for the city and the budget and over the years, and I very much want to express my appreciation. So I want to make sure I said that. So, but the thing that concerns me is the fact that, you know, about 44% of the operating budget is really not in the budget for us to review. And I'm referring specifically to the fact that, you know, it's repeated quite often, you know, the fact that it says, at the time the budget was developed, labor negotiations were underway and after being postponed due to the state of emergency declared in response to COVID-19. Therefore, there are no changes to the salary and wage scales. So my concern, Mr. Chairman and members of the Budget Committee and City Council, is you're asking me to put my stamp of approval on this budget when we really don't know you know, there's 44% of the that's not being accounted for in this budget because of, now, I understand the reasons are, you know, there's valid reasons for that, but again, you know, it's repeated time and time again throughout the budget, and I'm concerned about that because I'm being on the Budget Committee as a citizen representative. I'm being asked to approve this budget, and I don't have all the information. One of my questions to the Finance Director Rodecker was, you know, will there be supplemental meetings for the Budget Committee when these wages and benefits are finalized for us to, you know, review and put our stamp of approval? And the answer I got back was that, you know, that there will be no additional Budget Committee review, you know, that it will be approved by the city, you know, by City Council resolution into that effect. So that's all well and good, but I wanted to make sure I voiced my concerns. Now, not that I'm a big fan of these, of any kind of meetings, especially ones at night, but if I'd be willing to, once this information is known about personal services and once that gap is filled, you know, I'm willing to step up and put my money where my mouth is, as it were, and attend the meeting so I have an opportunity, so you have an opportunity for my input on, you know, what that does to the overall budget. But that's a concern of mine. I brought it up in the questions, and I don't think it's been, I don't feel it's been adequately addressed. Thank you.
So I'll touch on the operating budget for the city in one of the slides coming up. So the personal service, and we can talk more about personal services when we get to that slide, but just so to make it a little more, give you a little more context, the personal service budget is in the operating budget. It's just in there at a status quo level. So any changes will be the incremental change. In that, as mentioned, will be subject to a budget supplemental, and that goes through a public hearing process where it goes before council in front of a public hearing. So the incremental change will come via supplemental sometime in July, August, whenever they get the labor negotiations completed. But we'll get to that point. We'll get to that. It's one of the slides coming up, and we can talk more about the operating budget in general. Just kind of wanted to...
I have one other question from Councilor Linville.
You're on mute.
You're muted. Unmute, yeah.
Yeah. Trying to take my hand down and I can't do that. So I just wanted to clarify, Keith, before you move forward and in reference to Mr. Bunn's question, I assume that the 43+% of the budget, that it references current personnel costs, is in the budget. Is that not correct, as we have it in the book right now?
Yeah.
Correct. I don't have
The only thing missing is the unknown of what's going to happen with negotiations, and this is not uncommon. It just happens to be a timing thing. We negotiate three-year contracts with our two bargaining units. It just so happened that we did a one-year extension because of COVID, so this is just a timing issue on our part. When we negotiate these contracts, these collective bargaining agreements, we're mindful of the city's limited resources and what we can give to our employees, so all that is at the top of our mind when we're negotiating, that we have to be able to sustain these the employees' salary and benefits long term. So there's nothing really new here, but what we don't know, and once we have that information and council signs off on the CBA, then we will come back to council with that collective bargaining agreement. But I understand Member Bunn's concerns, and I wish there was more we could say on it, but we just don't know until council ratifies the agreements.
And just a reminder, we aren't really the ones that approve the budget. City council does that. We as a budget committee make a recommendation.
Right.
To council.
That's correct. City council has the sole discretion to, for the class and compensation for all city employees.
Member Bunn.
So I understand all that. But again, I've been asked to serve on this committee to give my input, my approval, and I understand perfectly well that the ultimate authority rests with the city council. And I understand the mechanics. I'm not faulting anybody for doing what I understand there are circumstances that have forced this issue to go beyond these meetings. All I'm saying is I'm uncomfortable with the fact that as a budget committee member, I'm not given an opportunity to provide my input on those costs when they do represent a large part of the budget. And so granted, I'm not questioning the staff's commitment to make sure to make sound fiscal judgments. I'm not saying that at all. But nobody can guarantee that there could be some big changes that nobody's anticipating, because as you did, as City Manager Cosgrove did say, we don't know what we don't know. That's all I'm saying is I'm thinking, it's a concern that I have. I'm voicing it as a member of and this is, I've been on the budget committee 2 tenures, and this is my second one. And I've been through a lot of these, and I just feel that all I'm saying is I think a budget committee should be given an opportunity to formally review the changes and then and provide input. That's what you're asking us to do. That's all.
Thank you. Keith, back to you.
Okay, so just two more points kind of for the general good. The city, of course, as required, uses fund accounting, which focuses on accountability and tracking to ensure the resources of each fund is being used to their intended use. The city has 24 funds, 11 operating funds, and 13 capital. Urban Renewal has another 9 funds, and we'll get into that tomorrow. But the city has 24 funds. So one thing also to keep in mind on the next few slides, we are going to speak, or at least I'm going to speak in terms of the budget in the aggregate, which is $241.8 million. But this is really a collection of 24 self-balancing fund budgets, and all resources and requirements within each fund have to be budgeted and must be in balance. So, and additionally as well, the budgetary level of control for each fund is set at the program level within each fund. So, for example, the program expenditures for finance department, law enforcement, library, they all are in the general fund, but the budgetary level control is at that department level for those departments. Capital projects is another budgetary level control area, as well as debt service and contingency. So within each fund, you'll have a bottom line budget, and then you'll have budgetary level controls at those levels. So something to kind of keep in mind. So this is a visual display of the city's 24 funds, broken out in the 3 primary clusters is the way we kind of think of things here. You have You have the operating funds, and these are the 11 operating funds. This is really the day-to-day operations where we account for the day-to-day operations of the city based on the specific revenue streams. And I listed the largest revenue stream for each fund. In the general fund, that's where you're going to find the property taxes. And so I've listed those out. Within the operating funds, we also distinguish between governmental type funds and business type funds. Business type funds are really the utility funds, the water, sewer, street lights, and stormwater. These funds act more like a little bit more like a business, so there's a little bit of a different accounting treatment. Really the difference between governmental and business type funds are primarily rely on charges for services, whereas a governmental type fund relies on fees and taxes. So it's kind of a little bit of a wonkish accounting, different treatment. The other area of funds grouped is the SDC funds, and this is where all the funds collected on new development go into, and there's legal restrictions on how they are spent. They can only be spent on costs created for really development of infrastructure. And then we have our capital improvement funds, and this is where the capital project budget that Kathy will go into later tonight will talk about. One other thing, this slide we can use to kind of understand a little bit of the transfers that go on within the city. So the capital improvement funds don't typically have their own revenue sources. They rely on transfers in from either the operating or the SDC funds for their expenses. And the capital expenditure funds will have project management fees and overhead charges that are then reimbursed to either the community development fund or the general fund. And this is a large part of how the community development fund gets funded, actually, through project management fees of the capital projects. One other kind of note on transfers, just to mention here, within the general fund, that's where you'll find housed the finance department, the legal department, HR. Those departments also get costed out via transfers to those other operating type funds to the extent that they use those services. So for example, transit has, human resource costs and finance costs and, water, sewer operating. So a portion of those department charges for those type of policy and administrative departments get costed out via the transfers to these other funds. And we'll go into the transfers of the overall budget here shortly as well. So that's kind of a budget overview. As I mentioned, the budget in total is $241.8 million, and this is kind of a visual display of how that gets broken out by fund. You can see our CIP and SDC funds really are 37% of that budget, and then followed by the utility, water, sewer, storm funds. The general fund has a pretty good share, as well as the transit fund has really grown a lot over the years, and they represent 6.9% of that overall budget as we display it here by fund. So from here, we're going to go in and look at the resources, and then we're going to look at the requirements of that $241.8 million. And the resources are going to total $241.8, as will the requirements. This is a quick visual demonstration of the resources. You can see the beginning fund balance is the lion's share of that. The interfund transfer is 26.7. A little bit what we talked about, that's just the movement of money between funds. Anytime any kind of money gets moved, it's got to be budgeted for, and that's where it is at the interfund level. And then really to the right here are all really the current revenue streams, the property taxes, other taxes, licenses and permits, and we'll go into that here real quick on the next slide and flesh out any differences and any questions that arise, we can address them here. So this is the resources. We're looking at fiscal year 22, totals 241.8 compared to fiscal year 21. Property taxes, we're projecting 5% increase. So I'm just kind of going to flesh out what's new, what's happening. The city's permanent rate stays the same year after year, 2.5206 per 1,000 of assessed value. And property taxes in Oregon are as you realize, are kind of the two pillars of them are Measure 50, which deals with the assessed value, and that limits any increase in assessed value to 3% per year, of which our permanent rate is then applied for. Measure 5 has additional complexities that can affect the property tax. I'm not going to necessarily get into that now, but so instead of 3%, we are at 5%, which is pretty consistent with the trend here in the city, because it's not just assessed, it's not just, the city's growing, basically. And right now, our hotspot for development is the Frog Pond area. So 5% increase of property taxes is what we are anticipating for next year's budget. Other taxes in this line, and also, by the way, this ties to page 23 in the budget book. This is really the consolidated comprehensive look at the overall budget. Within other taxes are hotel motel, the gas tax that Kathy mentioned, transit tax, and really what's new is just moderate growth expectations. What drove that 2% increase is primarily the gas tax has increased a little bit. Licenses and permits are pretty much staying flat. Within this line item, in the general fund, is the franchise fees, which we collect about $3.5 million, as well as our business license fee. And the other two funds that primarily take in licenses and permits are the building and the CD funds, and they're in at $1 million and $0.7 million each. So what's new is the building permits are up $109,000, but CD permits are down $115,000. When we talk to the department heads, I think it's tomorrow in the building department and the CD, we can discuss that a little bit. It's not particularly concerning. They kind of move in different directions at times because permit fees are collected at different points in the development process here at the city. So the engineering departments can be taken in advance, and the building permits are taken later as development incurs, so they can move in different directions. Intergovernmental revenue is huge this year. What's new is the city is anticipating receiving $8.4 million from the city of Sherwood for the city's largest CIP project this year, which is a 24.3 water treatment expansion project. Intergovernmental revenue, of course, also includes in the general fund $2.7 million, which is the library money that we receive from the county, and then the state shared revenue that Kathy talked about earlier, as well as a good chunk of transit's revenue now. They're anticipating close to $4 million in federal, state combined intergovernmental revenue. What's not in here, or what's in here just a little bit, is you may have heard the city is allocated, I don't know the exact number, it's going to be right around $5 million of the American Recovery Funds grant. That has not been budgeted yet because we don't know how, we don't have a full clear picture of it. So that is not reflected in that number. It's reflected partially because we are anticipating there's an increase of 3 janitorial positions that we are anticipating will be able to be paid for by part of those funds, and that those janitor positions will be assigned to clean the parks and additional facilities to a higher standard of public health. So we're pretty confident at least those will be covered by that grant. Charges for services across the city is up 3%. Mainly it's utilities revenue from population growth, as well as there's a 3% rate increase. There's a series of 4 of them, and each May until the last one is scheduled for May 1st of 2023. There was a 6% stormwater increase that was effective this past January, and then just population growth. City has about 6,500 utility accounts, and that is growing every year. SDC is slightly down, and again, we can talk to Chris Namsu, CD Director, and Dan Carlson tomorrow about SDC revenue. It's development in the city. What's new and what is growing is the Frog Pond infrastructure fee. and that is up 1.7 million compared to last year, and that falls into those SDC, which is, also is water SDC, sewer SDC, street SDC, and so those, again, those get collected at different times in the development process, so it's not overly concerning that they're down 8%, it's just a difference to note here. Investment revenue with the city down 23%. Unfortunately, we have stock market highs, but we have interest rate lows. The city follows ORS 294 for its investment guidelines, and that basically limits us to an 18-month investment window. We put a chunk of our investable funds in with the short-term investment fund with the state, which is called the local government investment pool. That's got a current rate of 0.6%, but that has a cap on how much you can invest in that, and then the rest of that we have to invest on our own, which we put in U.S. Treasuries, we'll put in munis, Federal Home Loan Bank, Federal Farm Credit, as well as we can invest up to 35% of our portfolio in corporate notes. So the corporate notes are doing a little bit better, but you can see that they're at 0.5, they're 0.15. Treasuries are at 0.10. So it's really challenging to invest in, and the corporate notes also have to be AAA, so they're not necessarily really high yielding more than a U.S. Treasury, because we're limited again to 18 months. So anyway, we're down 23% on that. Court fines and other, minimally down. It's got a larger percentage increase, but we're talking, less than 100,000. A bigger differential is this interfund activity. Year over year, kind of.
I have a question back on that previous slide.
Sure.
So on the investment,
yeah.
So how does LGIP get 0.6? What do they do?
Well, it's interesting. They have professional advisors. They have a longer investment term that they can invest in. It's a more aggressive type investment. It's pretty safe. I mean, we're still talking really secure, and the LGIP has done incredibly well at that 0.6. I don't know exactly what's in there, but, through their professional management and their access to, greater longer-term investments, as well as more than, corporate. And I think they can go down. We're limited to AAA corporate notes. I'm not sure, but I think they have a little more flexibility there. So they're able to.
Are they a little bit more risk?
Yeah, we're talking about, debt here. In the abstract, yes. Yeah, they're a little bit more risky. And that's actually why they cap it. They cap it for municipalities at, I think, $50 million roughly. And it's wrapped into the ORS. I don't completely know why they cap it, but I think it's possibly partly so of trying to mitigate or limit, risk of, investments for people. So
they also have a lot larger balance to invest than we do. All of the cities are able to use this as their savings account, if you will. So
we maximize it, though.
Yeah, they have a lot more money to work with than what we have.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Interfund activity, as what I said, is up 17%. And what's going on there, in addition to the normal transfers that are happening into the city's doing 2 overnight loans to the urban renewal district, to 2 different urban renewal districts. And we can get into that a little bit more tomorrow when we talk about urban renewal. But this kind of funding strategy saves us, the city and the urban renewal agency, a lot of money because we don't have to go out for bonded debt. Within urban renewal, the urban renewal agency for capital projects can only access those funds through debt financing. So the general fund, overnight loans, the urban renewal funds these loans, and they pay them back the next day, and then the urban renewal district has access to that tax increment, which For next year, there's 3 CIPs, and we'll get into this a little bit tomorrow, that the Kinsman and the Beckman Bridge will be paid for partially by those urban renewal funds. So it's kind of a legalistic funding strategy. And for the general fund, it's just an overnight in and out. So you're going to see this as a requirement as well in interfund activities. Loan proceeds here. Okay. The city right now only has one outstanding bond, and we are looking or anticipating an additional $7 million bond that will help pay for the expansion of the water treatment plant. And Kathy will get into that a little bit later tonight when we talk about the CIP. So that'll be a proceed, that's a resource. And I think that wraps up the resources. So now we're going to look at the requirements. And again, the requirements are also going to be $241.8 million. And that's going to be part of the how that flushes out, or personnel services, materials and services, capital outlay, the CIP budget, the debt budget, the interfund budget, and then what we hold in contingency, which is really the ending fund balance. And this is kind of a visual display. We're going to get into the actual numbers here, which are perhaps a little more easier to grapple with. So again, we look at fiscal year 22, the 241.8. We talk about the personnel services. We're budgeting 20.9 million. So that is essentially more or less the status quo personnel budget, as if no one is getting any kind of cost of living increase or whatnot. But what that has built in, it's got all the, the benefits and the health insurance built in. We budget a 10% health insurance increase just because, health insurance is one of those things that just keeps going up. So that's in there. What's not in there is the increment of, perhaps a COLA or whatnot on the wages. What also is in there is, as I mentioned, we have 3.75 FTE additions next year. We have those 3 janitors, and that is we're looking at that to be paid for by those American Recovery Funds. We have an additional seasonal, it's a non-benefited position that'll help the roads department. And we have a 1 point FTE in the transit department as a program coordinator, and I think we'll have Dwight in here can talk about that a little later today. And then we have a reduction in a park seasonal of 1, so it all nets out to 3.75 FTE. An FTE is a person who works 2,080 hours, so. Also in that number baked in is the council compensation resolution that was passed a while ago. And then as we mentioned, the labor negotiations have been delayed, so they're not in that number. Materials and services is up 0.8%, and that is a $24 million budget. Of course, the top 3 outsourced departments here in the city account for 50% of that. We outsource our water treatment, the wastewater treatment, and we outsource law enforcement. So those 3 combined account for about 12 million of that 24 million. And we're going to go over, these numbers will also be broken out by department, so it won't be your last bite at looking at these numbers. Capital outlay down 18%. This is a list of every capital outlay that we have next year. Most of it's in transit department, the buses. They have budgeted $2 million, 3 CNG buses, a trolley, an electrical bus, and some software. Public Works has 0.7, or around 700,000 budgeted for a vacuum jetting truck of 300,000, as well as 247 and 82,000 for water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant equipment repair type capital items. That gets us to a budget of 47.6 million, which is 0.6% over operating budget last year. So the operating budget at times is kind of a metric of understanding how much it costs to run the city. We don't include debt in that. Some cities will include the debt. The city here only uses debt financing for capital improvement projects, so we put it below the total operating line. Kathy's going to talk about capital improvement budget here shortly. It's 46.9 million. And when Kathy talks about it, she's also going to talk about it as more fully loaded in terms of it's going to include the project maintenance costs here, which, again, those project maintenance costs are what's used to fund the community development fund. So she'll have a little bit different number in it, and I think she'll also include some of the urban renewal projects, because sometimes those are commingled with both urban renewal and non-urban renewal funds. So when she talks about the capital improvement budget, the debt here, let's go down here. So what's new? The city refinanced the $24 million bond we had for taken out, I think it was back in 2011, for the last wastewater treatment improvement. And we refinanced that debt at a rate of 1.43% over a 10-year period, and that is going to result in a net present value savings of around $2.9 million. So that's a 10-year bond we refinanced, and we saved $2.9 million by lowering the interest rate on that. So our debt payments.
Nice job, by the way. Nice job on that, by the way.
Yeah, that. And then what we also have is I've got the $7 million included in there. Anticipated, that'll be the debt service on that $7 million bond we're anticipating taking out to pay for the water treatment plant. And then, so the interfund transfers, again, that differential is due to the overnight loan, the payment, and then, or the proceeds, and then the repayment of that. So that inflated that. That brings us down to a contingency of 79.6. That's really kind of can be thought of as the ending fund balance of all the funds. And I'll show you on the next slide how that breaks out between all the funds. We're going to look at the fiscal year 22. Those are all the funds. The bottom line is that 79 million. And when we look at all these are all the operating funds with the SDCs and the CIPs kind of consolidated at the bottom. A couple of the funds that we watch are going to be the building inspection fund. It's slightly got a dip in the ending fund balance, not necessarily an emergency concern, it's something we're watching. CD fund is another one, as well as the stormwater. Stormwater is always kind of on the watch list because there are so many more, the capital needs are so much greater than the balance of the operating, the current operating fund is. So it's just something, you know, over time we keep an eye on and watch how that is. Another one is not on the watch list. It used to be transit. They are really doing quite well, ending fund balance of 7.5 million, but just something to note that of that balance, 2.2 million is reserved by, that's the STIF money we've received in advance. So that has specific earmarks on how it's supposed to be spent. So it's kind of within that balance. And that is kind of an overlook of the grand picture of the budget. And now we're going to go to the CIP portion, and then we're going to go into more of the department level, unless anybody has any specific questions right now.
Okay, not seeing any hand raises, we'll go ahead and go into the capital improvement program. I have with me this evening my trustee sidekick, Mr. Zach Weigel. He's our expert on anything to do with capital projects. So if you need further details on anything, please let us know, and I know he'll run right up to the microphone and give you what he got. So as Keith mentioned, when we look at the CIP program, we look at it in total. So this includes our all of our projects with the urban renewal also. And this year it's $60.5 million, which is a little bit higher than we normally do. What is different this year is that we have 4 projects that added together come to about $40 million. So we have 4 projects that account for 66% of our total CIP budget. we have a total of 100 projects. So we have 96 projects spread out over 33%. So definitely weighted heavily on these 4 projects. Those include the water treatment plant, that $25.3 million. 5th Street to Kinsman, the street portion is $6.4 million. The Beckman Bridge is $3.4 million. And the I-5 bridge set aside that we've been creating to for a grant match in order to build the bridge, and that's up to $5 million. It's pretty typical spread as far as what type of project we have. Most of our projects are the total rebuilds and or new construction is 85% this fiscal year. The other major one are our annual maintenance projects. And those are, you'll see throughout all the types of different CIP. Looking at it from the funding source side, the number one contributor to our projects are the SDCs. This year it's about $20.2 million and 33% of the overall budget. The second one is our all other category, $15.3 million, and those are listed here on this side of the screen. And as Keith had mentioned, the biggest portion of that is the City of Sherwood contribution to the wastewater treatment plant project. We have about $14.6 million coming from our operating funds. That's our water, sewer, stormwater, different fees that we collect. And lastly, we have $10.4 million coming from our urban renewal districts. So how do projects get on the list? This is a question that we're all, all of us are probably asked at some point in time. And, the number one priority, of course, is the health, safety, and welfare for the citizens of the city, as well as for the city assets themselves. And that's, we'll cover those with our annual repairs and maintenance and replacement. We also have to have regulatory drivers. We have a couple projects this year that are being driven because we have to do something for us, the state. Master plans are another big source of our projects. These master plans, when they're approved by council, they'll have a 20-year budget for the CIPs that they think will be necessary over that period of time. And of course, council goals and initiatives, things that come out, in the middle of a pandemic or of a firestorm. So we have all different ways that we can get projects on this list. So we're going to go ahead and look at the projects on the map. And what we do is that we, arbitrarily divide the city into 4 parts: Barber Street, east to west, and I-5, north to south. So hopefully you guys can see this better than I can. I'm glad I have my magnifying glasses on. We'll start at the top here. We have our Basalt Creek project. This is a planning project that is continuing from previous years with the goal of having the area development ready when it's time to move forward. And that project's about $85,000. We move down a ways. We have our 95th Avenue storm pipe repairs. This is a $199,000 project to repair damaged pipe. We have the Boberg diversion structure. That one has been damaged as well. It's $112,000 to get that one back up and running. One of the council goals was to move forward with the public works facility. This will be located next to the SMART building. This year we have $175,000 budgeted to create a funding plan on how we can get that built. And we have a couple of different transit projects. We have a couple out at the transit center. We have they're going to be creating a covered waiting area for customers. Another project will be $256,000 of STIF funds will be used to install 14 e-reader boards at the different bus stops. We have some security upgrades, about $35,000, where we're going to upgrade the software for the surveillance and also repair the gate in the backyard or their yard. And the largest project in this area will be the Regional Park 7 and 8. This is in the Villebois area. It's $1.065 billion. And that should be about the last of that project. Are there any questions for Zach? He's waiting here, you know, chomping at the bit. All right, well, we'll move forward. Maybe next screen. Okay, so for the northeast quadrant, we start up at the top here. We have a water system telemetry, which is upgrading our radio-based SCADA system at Ellingson Way. And since we're right there, we're going to go ahead and work on the facility at Ellingson as well, and our water facility rehab project. This project, a total of $279,000, also includes a preliminary design for a facility out at Charbonneau. We have our Frog Pond master planning at about $291,000, of which $228,000 will be grant funded. We can see here we have the beginnings of our Beckman projects. The Beckman Dip Bridge, of course, is the largest project. This fiscal year, we have $3.45 million from the East Side District, getting ready to kick off this project. We have Beckman Road improvements, which are funded through our street SDCs. That's about $1.3 million. And our sanitary improvements of $216,000. And we'll also be putting in a street light at Coffee Creek and Beckman at a cost of about $312,000. Any takers? Okay. On to the southeast quadrant. And this one, we begin with the Town Center Implementation Plan. This will be budgeted for $230,000, and we are looking to complete the infrastructure financial plan. The Memorial Park Pump Station, this year it's only $5,000, but we wanted to put it on the map because it's actually being completed. This has been one of those long haul projects that just took a while to get started, but it's completed and we're ready to move forward to other projects. In our Memorial Park master plan implementation, we have $506,000 budgeted to replace the primary restroom down in the park. In Charbonneau area, we have our annual update, our annual maintenance updates. It's about $2.1 million altogether. The largest one coming from the stormwater fund of $894,000. But there also will be repairs to water lines, sewer lines, and streets. And we have the Charbonneau lift station rehab project of $490,000. And this is just replacing aging infrastructure. And of course, we already talked about the upgrades for the preliminary design of the wells for future. That's $279,000. And that brings us to our last quadrant. And of course, this is one of our busier areas of the city. We start up here at the top with our $5 million set aside for the I-5 pedestrian bridge. We have a couple of different areas where we'll be doing some priority one water distribution.
Member Ham, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Sorry, what's a lift station? Is the Charbonneau lift
it's kind of a fancy term for how we convey raw sewage to our water or to our wastewater treatment plant.
Lovely. I was hoping it was something like that. Thank you.
I'll go into more detail, though.
Zach may have a more precise engineering term for it, but that's basically what it does.
You know, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, man. Zach, you missed your chance. Or a tie and everything, you know. Okay. Okay, now I got so excited there. I don't know where I'm at. Okay, so one of the exciting projects to get started here are Brown Road improvements, and why is that exciting, you may ask? This is actually the last project for the West Side Urban Renewal District. So once this project is done, we can start looking forward to shutting down that district. It's been extremely successful, and it's kind of exciting to see that it, is coming to the end of its road. A big project going on, of course, is the 5th Street to Kinsman connector, and the street project, of course, is $6.5 million. It also has a $866,000 portion for water piping and $862,000 for sewer. We have a little bit of Ice Age Trail, about $5,000. This is, hopefully at some point in time, this will be linked throughout the entire city, but it takes a little bit at a time, so we keep working at it. We have the wastewater treatment master plan. This is just for leftover invoices that happen to get processed next fiscal year. It only has a budget of $10,000. But the important part is that once it's adopted by the city council, then we'll be able to go into the wastewater rate studies, which has not been done for quite some time. And so it will be quite a process to go through that. We have same kind of a set-aside fund set up for the French Prairie Bridge. We have $1 million set aside for a future grant. We've talked about the water treatment plant expansion. It's going from a 15 MGD to 20 MGD, and it includes electrical upgrades and seismic retrofitting. And then lastly, we have the Coral Creek and River Green pump station. It's $908,000 for this fiscal year, and will replace and upgrade the existing system as well as the pump station. So that's a look at the major projects that we have going on. We have other types of projects that we don't necessarily get on the map. Our street maintenance one is, for example, I have
a question from Mayor Fitzgerald.
Sorry, I'm a little behind on this, but I think my question is within water. And I wonder if you could just recap once more the project with the city of Sherwood. That is such a big project. What is being, what that entails?
Okay. This is the expansion at our water treatment plant. We're expanding from 15 million gallons per day to be able to handle 20 million gallons per day. And it also includes upgrading electrical systems and some seismic retrofitting, and they are paying approximately 1/3 of the project. It's basically a third in operating, a third with SDCs, which we'll have to borrow some money for, and then a third from the city of Sherwood.
Thank you. I just wanted to give that another little highlight. Thank you.
Yes, that's a big one.
President Ackerval.
Thank you. I just wanted to take a quick moment. These slides where the projects are broken out by quadrants, I find these to be such a great overview and a really helpful visual representation of the projects that we're working on. I know in our budget binders, we have some maps where it'll be like all the water projects or parks, but I just wanted to give feedback that I love these slides. I love this map. I wouldn't be opposed to having this sort of visualization in the budget binder itself, because it is such a helpful view to see things all kind of together and understand where the work is being done throughout the city. So, thank you.
Thanks. I like it too, because you can see where, we take advantages of the synergy of, if we're opening up a road, we're going to do the water and the sewer at the same time instead of, 5 years later go, oh, we should have done that. So, yeah, so that's a good idea, and I'll make sure to pass it on to my staff. So some of the other, we talked a lot about the different master plans, but we had a couple of ones that weren't mentioned. We have a water management and conservation plan. This is a state required plan that we put together. We have to do it every 10 years, and every 5 years we have to do an update. Another important master plan update will be for the stormwater, and followed by stormwater rates and SDC updates. We're updating our facilities master plan. Seems like we continue to grow, and we have opportunities to move things around and see what works best for the city. And lastly, we have the parks urban forest management plan, and this is to help us develop a plan to maintain a healthy and viable urban forest. And we can't forget our IT projects. We have an annual project of fiber connectivity where we're trying to create a loop around the entire city to have some redundancy. We're still working on that ERP replacement. We are pretty much up and running for the financials. It was quite interesting doing a budget document with a program that you don't really understand, but we managed to get it all together. We are looking to go live with a payroll on July 1st, so that's just right around the corner. The InterGov project, I understand, has been moved to a go-live date of January 1, so that they can, there's a lot of setup in those kind of programs. And so I know they're working feverishly to move forward on that one. And next week, we have our first utility billing kickoff meeting, and that will be about a year-long implementation as well. And they also have a security access system project of $150,000, and this is to replace physical keys and update card accesses and add security cameras. And that is our $60 million capital improvement program. And now we're going to go ahead and get started on our actual department presentations. Tonight,
how about a question with Member LaGarza first?
Sure.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I noticed in the capital project summaries, I noticed several tree mitigation projects, and two of them tied back. One was in facilities, one was in parks, and two of them tied back to the ice storm. And I was wondering, is there any outside funding for the emergency declaration, either from the state, or are we looking to, or are we able to get any funding outside of our funds, maybe state level? I don't know about federal level for the emergency.
Yeah.
That occurred. I was just wondering if that was part of those projects or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And to answer your question directly, yes, there are other funding sources that we have gone after. We currently have a request into FEMA for the ice storm. And I believe we're going to get close to, well, knock on wood here. We think we're going to get back around 100% of what we committed our resources to respond to that emergency. We also had some ARA funds that replaced some of the other things that we did, but there's also a committee of the city called the Metro Enhancement Committee, and if you're aware of that program, we basically get $1 per ton because we have a transfer station here in Wilsonville. Republic Services operates, so we get $1 per ton of wet waste that goes through that facility, and we use that for community beautification projects. And we've recently made a request to that committee, which Councilor Linville is on and Councilor West are on. So we made that presentation to go after some funds moving forward for things like stump grinding and tree replacement and some safety related things we need to do in our parks and for some of our HOA common areas as well. So there is other funding sources that we are going after.
Fantastic, thank you.
I did notice there was a note in the chat from Mayor about what is the ERP, and that is our Enterprise Resource
planning
Program.
program.
So that's our new
It's our accounting system.
software system for our financial and our building permits.
Mayor Fitzgerald. You're muted.
Yes, thank you, Kathy, Ms. Brodacker, and I was just noticing that we can really benefit from having our acronyms spelled out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that one. We've been talking about that one for so long. You know, I wake up in my nightmares and have ERP on the ceiling. So, yeah. But thank you. I'll take that into, make sure we do that next year. So we're going to go forward with our transportation and our public works program this evening. Just to kind of give you a highlight, this is what you'll be seeing for each of our different programs. We start with the ending budget of the fiscal year 2021, and then we explain what changes were made to get to the budget that's being presented this evening. So we'll kick off.
And I really like this format. I really appreciate this from a meeting perspective. It paints a more clear picture than just staring at the overall numbers.
Yeah, we like this one too. It helps explain a lot of things. It gives us a great time to really understand the budget as well, because we have to figure it all out. So first up, we have our transportation, and I believe that out there somewhere is Dwight.
Yep, I am out here somewhere. I'm not sure why I'm not on camera, but that's okay. You have to trust me. I have a suit on and a hat. and a tie. I dressed up for the occasion. Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. I am Dwight Brashear. I am the Transit Director for SMART, which is South Metro Area Regional Transit, owned and operated by the City of Wilsonville. We are also the Fleet Department. And joining me this evening, I have Scott Simonton, who is our Fleet Manager, and Eric Loomis should be there in the chamber, just in case there are specific questions about either of those areas. They stand ready to respond. As you can see, the picture there on the title slide or introductory slide shows one of our hardworking cleaners, Bernardo. He's not disinfecting the bus. We do wash the buses regularly. We try not to disinfect the windshield. We haven't found that would be effective, but we do clean, and it's part of our image, keeping our fleet in tip-top shape. So we can go on to the next slide.
Dwight, would you like me to get you on camera?
Any other department?
Would you like me to get you on camera, Dwight?
Oh, can you do that?
Yeah, just give me a second.
There he is.
I told you, look, tie, hat, whole shooting match there. All right, so just like any other department in the city, we dealt with and have been dealing with the pandemic. We, unlike some of our sister agencies across the state, we never shut down, not even for a day during the pandemic. For example, Chariots down in Salem, they had it so bad, so many operators came down with COVID that they shut down for about 2.5 weeks to kind of get back on their feet. I mean, they were reeling, kind of spiraling downward, and so the only thing they could think to do was just to shutter service altogether. But we haven't had to do that. Knock on wood, we haven't had one single case of COVID in our ranks, and we are one of the few transit agencies in the state not to have a single case. And you think about it, our drivers are public facing. every day in everything that they do. So they come in contact with a number of people on a daily basis. And so it just speaks to, we won't put it all on our ability to sanitize. A lot of it has to do with luck, and we've been very fortunate. But sometimes you make luck happen, and I think that's what this team has done. So we are currently operating at pre-pandemic service levels. We did cut service briefly. The federal government stepped in with $1.2 million almost right away, and we immediately put the service back. That's what the expectation was of the federal government, and so we did that. Our transportation options and travel training, we did shutter, and they have been shuttered. We're hoping to be able to bring those programs back in the fall, but we'll see. Safety is always going to be paramount for us. To my team's dismay, we instituted fiscal restraints, and I am I'm a miser, when it comes to public dollars. And so we manage this budget, I do, as if it were my own, and so we've done very well during this time. And we continue to look at our budget across all of the different programs, and I challenge the team to cut where they can. We're never going to compromise on safety and our customer service, but there are areas where we can do without for a while, and we have done that, and nobody has grumbled, at least not openly. So I appreciate their effort. We continue to provide PPE and implementing federal and state and local pandemic rules. The federal and state government started shipping us almost immediately boxes and boxes of PPE, and at no cost. They knew that our drivers, our customers were vulnerable, and so they provided a lot of the PPE at no cost to us. And so we took it. We were grateful to have it, and we still have quite a bit of it that we put out in the system regularly. So we're proud of that. Offering free rides to vaccinations, that's something we kicked off here especially when they opened up vaccinations to everybody. We were carrying a number of folks over to the community college, but as soon as they opened it up, if somebody needed to go to the convention center, we'd get them there. We tried to do, 2 or 3. We still were limited, and we still are today, limited to the number of passengers we can actually put on a bus. But we try to do it safely and get everybody to their vaccination sites. So, next slide. All right, so a few of the programs that, we are working on, some of the funding, statewide transportation improvement fund. We're expecting $1.4 million from that this fiscal year. It does fluctuate. It is based on payroll tax, employee payroll tax. And so I think the first biennium, we actually did a little better than we anticipated. We're thinking things will slow a bit, but not too much. We are the second largest recipient of STIF, statewide transportation improvement funds, in the Tri-County area behind TriMet. We have a van pool program that we've been trying to get off the ground. The pandemic put the brakes on it. We've got $96,000 to use towards that program to help buy down the costs for employees. So we are currently working with some of our employers in Wilsonville, doing surveys and things like that, so that when we are able to offer this program, we're ready to go. We have Enterprise rental car providing the vans, and so the program is pretty much ready to go. We just need the green light from the state and CDC and all that. We've been working on our CNG fueling station upgrade. Scott is on the call right now. He's project manager on that. We're working with Northwest Natural. We outgrew the current delivery system, and then we had a hard time getting parts because of the pandemic, and all the parts for that for the current system come out of Italy, and we were struggling. So we thought we would do an upgrade, get away from having to depend on the international parts, and be able to fuel quite a few more vehicles, because we are invested heavily in CNG and now electric as well. This is part of our goal to be totally alternative fuel, probably the first in the state, first transit agency in the state to be totally alternative fuel by 2026, 2027. Bus and bus stop technology upgrades. We just were awarded 198,000 stiff discretionary grant for, I think I heard Keith mention that Kathy mentioned that we were doing some upgrades at the individual bus stop. So someone standing at Sherry's bus stop will know exactly what time the next bus is coming. And we will put, we've got for about 16 of them throughout the system. So we're excited about that. It is a technology that is proven, and I think TriMet has a few of the same units out there. It's time for the, I hate to say it, when I arrived 3 years ago, I walked into a transit master plan update, and here we are 4 years later, and we're having to update it again because we pretty much have delivered on all of our promises, and we want to look at it. We're one of the few agencies in the state that is looking at it pandemic and then post-pandemic, do some public outreach, find out, what are the travel patterns? Have they changed? What do our customers want? What do they want us to do differently? And we're going to try to adjust accordingly. Vehicle expansion is something that you will always see every year. The federal government, for the most part, covers about 80% of the cost of a vehicle. They expect that we will maintain those vehicles to a certain standard, but they also will allow us and recommend that when that vehicle reaches its useful life, that we replace that vehicle. And so they make monies available to do that. And we have a very new fleet, which I'm very, very pleased with, lower maintenance costs result when you have a new fleet. So yeah, Scott and his team do an excellent job out there in the shop, not only fixing buses, but fixing tractors and lawnmowers and everything else. All right.
Question from Member Bunt.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Brashear, so what do you do with the used buses? Does the federal government allow you to sell that and keep that profit, or what's the expectation? What do you do when buses or any vehicle reaches the end of its service life?
Well, Scott has a very, very aggressive program for auctioning off those surplus vehicles. And what the federal government requires is that we put that money back into buying down the grant. So say, for instance, if it's an 80-20 grant, the next time we buy a bus, instead of us putting in 20%, maybe we put in 22, because we take the proceeds from the sale of those surplus vehicles and we put it back into the next bus purchase. So it really actually works out good. And we're audited on that regularly. So, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I think...
this is our part.
Are you done, Dwight?
Yeah, I know, but I was just looking at the personnel services, and you said Dwight will answer that. And
yeah, we can get into that here. It's really the only substantial differential in your budget, and we can talk about it real quick. Two kind of points I wanted to make about the transit budget in general is this budget is really a budget within a budget within a budget. When we talk about the variances in this department, two of the challenges is really aligning the budgetary grant requirements of the federal funds, because we have to budget our federal grants with we are a direct FTA recipient of federal funds, so they require that we budget in advance for how we're going to spend those federal funds. there's timing differences. And then as well as with the STIF funding, we also have to budget those funds with the state of Oregon. So aligning all those with the city budget can be tricky at times, and that's sometimes where we get some variances. The other, one of the other reasons we get some variances, swings in this department is timing issue, especially with buses. These have to be ordered very far in advance, and accounting and budgetary rules dictate that we expense the items in the period or the year for which they are delivered, and oftentimes we can't pinpoint that exactly. So it gets just rolled over, or we'll do a supplemental in the previous years or in the next year. So when we talk about variances, it's just kind of 2 points to remember. So as Kathy said, this will be the format for how we discuss these department budgets. They had a $9 million budget last year, and they are at an $8.3 million budget this year. Part of that is the removal of some vehicles. That 600 and I can't necessarily see this. I'm guessing at that number. It looks like 659, 941. I feel like I'm doing an eye test now, but so there's a reduction in those buses that were purchased in the prior year. Really, the change in this department, substantial change, is the request for an additional FTE, and that is, and this is what I thought, Dwight, if you wouldn't mind talking about a little bit. It's a new position for a transit program manager, and really, from my understanding, it's going to be kind of overseeing some of the federal fund requirements as well as the STIF fund requirements that we are faced with. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, primarily the STIF funding, and it is a STIF funded position. As long as that person is focused on STIF, we can charge, if that's all they do, we can charge 100% of it to STIF. The reporting requirements right now, because the program is so new, are onerous. And working with finance, and I think it may have been Brian, Mr. Cosgrove, who actually suggested that we look at this position, not only, we need somebody with a finance background. I think it's going to be very important. Right now, I've got Eric doing some of it, and McCracken will do some of it. Scott, helps out here and there where he can. It's a nightmare for the current staff, and we just want to make sure that we get it right. What I'm finding is most of the agencies across the state missed this. This was something that we could have put in, a position we could have put in 2 years ago and charged it to STIF. We were one of the majority of agencies that didn't do that, and now you're seeing agencies going back, putting this position in because it is an onerous reporting requirement right now. So we're seeing, and I think Keith has seen some of it, we've been fighting very, very hard with the state, against the state and against TriMet, and we're seeing some of the requirements reduced, maybe not enough, but we are audited, and our spending is scrutinized by the federal government because we do get a lot of federal dollars. And we want to get to the point where if the federal government says we're doing a good job, then that should be good enough for the state, and it definitely should be good enough for TriMet. And so we're fighting that battle. I think we're making some headway, but we definitely need a position to help us with this reporting. It's a lot. So
is this a fully loaded full year number?
This is fully loaded, benefits and everything. Yes.
Member Bunn.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Bashar, what's TriMet got to do with it?
Oh, my.
You just opened up a whole can of...
Does this meeting go to about midnight or so? TriMet has been given the title of qualified entity for the Tri-County area. So all of our funding, the funding is collected in Wilsonville, is basically sent to the state. The state sends the money to TriMet, and then TriMet sends it back to us.
Oh, okay.
We are the qualified entity. We are their subrecipient. And,
Enough said. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have enough time to go into that.
Oh, I think that, was there any more questions on transit?
Good answer.
The next,
Member LaGarza.
Thank you. Mr. Brasher, I'm really excited about the master plan update. And I was wondering, you mentioned going out to the writers or the public to find out participation rates or things like that post-COVID. And how were you going to go about that? I was just curious because I ride the it's been so long, the bus to Salem. And so I was kind of curious because I was writing pre-COVID and haven't been writing since COVID. So I was kind of curious how you might go about.
Well, we took this on 3-4 years ago, and we did it the traditional way. We had open houses. We brought folks in. We had a transit advisory committee set up. I think we'll stand up a transit advisory committee. I'm hoping that with the pandemic, things will have quieted down. Everybody's vaccinated for the most part, and we can do a traditional outreach. If not, then we'll have to do virtual outreach. It's not as effective, in my opinion, as getting people together and allowing them to see stuff, touch stuff, really get a sense of what transit can do. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. One way or the other, this is going to be an extensive outreach. We're going to bring on a consultant, and this is what these folks do. And I expect it'll probably be at least a year of public outreach before we start to formulate the plan.
That makes sense. It might take a minute to get people involved and out. And all right, thank you.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
So the other department Dwight oversees is the fleet department. And we also have Scott Simonton, our fleet manager, on the line, I believe, too. There isn't really a lot of change in this department. It had a $1.5 million budget last year, and it has a $1.47 million budget proposed for 21-22. The dip down is because there are no purchases of vehicles scheduled out of the vehicle reserve that we have. Fleet gets charged out to all the departments that have vehicles, and within their charge, there's a charge for the current use, the fuel and oil change, as well as when a department purchases a vehicle, we also put in a component to build up a reserve to replace that vehicle. And we typically keep vehicles at least 10 years. And then at that time, the reserve has enough money to repurchase the next vehicle. So last year, they purchased $65,000 worth of combination of vehicles. This year, there's nothing. So their proposed budget has decreased. And I don't know if, Dwight, you wanted to add any other comment, or if Scott?
Right. Well, I think it just, making it clear that it's not, when you see the other number, the 1.2 and $1.3 million, those are all buses, but we do more than that. And this number represents everything except buses. So just to make that clear.
Fleet gets charged out to all the departments. I'd say the lion's share is about 80% of fleet is charged to the transit department, of course, because they're the heaviest users of fuel and maintenance. So that's the fleet. And next, we're going to talk about the 5-year forecast. So Kathy might have some words on that.
Yeah, so when I was working on the 5-year forecast for the transit, I could see the prior years, and it was pretty erratic. We were, up, and then we were way down, and, there were times when we didn't know where the transit fund was going. And then, of course, Dwight comes along, and it's, the angels come down and just give us buckets of money. And so it's a totally different story. I should have brought the other couple of years, because it really is pretty amazing to see the difference that has happened in the last 3 or 4 years. My thinking when I was doing this is that with the amount of grant money we receive, we probably will be spending what we receive. And if we don't get a grant, then we won't spend the money. So I see just this pretty, close-knit line of expenses with the revenues and a slight increase in our fund balance over the next 5 years. So I don't think this is one that we have to keep on our watch list. I know that's what Dwight's been striving for the last couple of years. So you're officially off my list anyway.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, when I first joined, the financial policy minimum and, our burn rate they intersect. They were right one with the other. And, it was the first task that myself and the team tackled. And I think we did a fairly decent job.
Yes, this is the financial minimum line down here. And this is where where we're at now with our reserves. So anyway, this list I said is officially off the watch list.
And never the twain shall meet, as knock on wood.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
Councilor Linville?
Well, I just wanted to commend you also on the, I don't know whether we're at the end of your report or not, but I know that as I did some historical look back, and this chart graphically represents it, there was a time when the transit tax revenue comprised pretty much the majority of the funding for SMART. And that is now, I think it's 60-40 now, and or even better than that. So I think there is also a misconception out there in the public that the transit tax revenue pays for all of SMART. And so it is business that is paying for our bus service. And so,
Nope, you muted.
While that is significant and not anything to be disparaged in any way, because those resources are important and we appreciate them. I do really want the public to really know too that the work that you've done has actually balanced that out over time. So,
yeah,
good work,
Counselor, and I think ultimately our goal is to become less dependent on that particular resource, because there are other resources, and we've done an incredible job tapping, state money, federal money. We hunt it down wherever we can find it, and we, for a little agency like Congressman Schrader pointed out in a meeting I was a few months ago. He said, we fight, SMART fights well above their weight class, and we have a seat at the table, and that seat is getting larger and larger, to TriMet's dismay. But we've got a good product, we've got a good team, and it's hard to knock us when we're putting such a good product out on the street. And it's only gonna get better as we start to bring some of the technology advances for our customers, some amenities. It's only going to get better. So I'm proud of this team. I couldn't be more proud.
Member Bunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry about this, the Smart Transit Fund that we're looking at. So the revenue line is the blue, expenditure line is kind of like a brown. Does the revenue line and the expenditure line, where'd the blue line go? Do they match? Is that covered up by the expenditure?
The blue line is slightly above the expenditure line. So the thinking was that as the revenues come in from grants and from the transit tax, that we will spend those money as they come in.
Okay. I'm sorry, did you say that and I just wasn't paying attention?
Oh, I didn't point out the blue line, but yeah, that was my thinking, is that, you know, if a grant was not received, we wouldn't, you know, if something happened, we didn't receive it, we wouldn't spend the money, but with the money that we do receive, we would be spending.
Yeah, again, just my historical, quick comment on historical perspective. I definitely remember 3 years ago, you know, when the things were looking bad, and I remember bringing it up, and I remember that time City Manager Cosgrove kind of almost ate my lunch.
I did not.
You know, and because I think I made the mistake of suggesting, well, maybe we should talk to TriMet type of thing. But anyway, but you know, I think obviously City Manager Cosgrove saw the great potential that Mr. Brashear has brought. And so, yeah, I definitely, having been there when we reviewed this 3 years ago, it was definitely looking bleak. And I just said, well, if it's that bad, then we need to do something, right? And everybody's like, okay, never mind, we'll take care of it. And sure enough, within a year, you know, Mr. Brashear was, you know, he put his money where his mouth was, and he did well, and he's been doing well ever since. So kudos to you, and thank you.
Well, thank you, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge Gina Troja, who is my immediate supervisor and keeps me in line and makes sure that I'm focused on the things that I need to focus on and gives me the support that I need. So I just want to acknowledge her as well.
Mayor Fitzgerald, you're muted.
I know we're spending a good amount of time on transit. I just wanted to add one more comment, is that as we're seeing this efficient fleet with the technology that Mr. Brashear is talking about and so forth, we want, and our employers are paying and have had this base, you know, they've gotten it started. They've given us something to work with. And we have a transit system that can be managed within our own city instead of just seeing what an outside provider might decide to do as far as routes. And I was recently visiting the Coca-Cola plant, and they pointed out, like all the employers, they have, you know, there's trouble hiring right now, but they really do appreciate the transit service. And it's just one more thing they can offer to their prospective employees, that they have this, you know, amenity to offer to their current and future employees. So I think the more we do with this, the more it will be used. Just wanted to add that, and thank you.
Well, that is the end of the transit review. Thank you, Dwight and Scott and Eric.
I do want to note that Dwight would be proud that Eric Loomis is here in the chambers, and he's wearing a suit and a tie, per department policy.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
He doesn't have a fedora, so he's not fedorable.
Well, I've got 30 of them. He can borrow one. Thank you all.
So now we're going to move on to Public Works. And of course, we have one of the top 10 public work directors. What was it, in the universe?
Yeah, in the universe.
Anyway, Laura just off a fresh wind, so she will be helping us discuss our public works. And in reality, they actually make up 31% of our operating budget. So she's responsible for a good size portion of that budget. Let her get started. Oops.
All righty. So, hello, Delora Kerber, Public Works Director. So Public Works is responsive. Our Public Works team are first responders, and as such, we're available 24/7, 365. This past year, Public Works staff has continued to implement protocols to help keep city staff safe through regular and thorough cleanings of the facilities, extra sanitizing efforts for extra safety, installation of engineering solutions such as the plexiglass dividers at City Hall, well, actually all city facility front counters, and stocking of sanitizers, gloves, and masks at the entrances of each building. In the fall 2020, staff was on call to address the issues and concerns related to the wildfires around the city, monitoring facility air quality and implementing innovative box fans with filters to help clean the facility air. Those are just a few of the things that the Public Works staff were doing. When the ice storm hit in February of this year, staff were on site to respond to the storm and then continued working long hours for many days afterwards to help clean up along the public right-of-way and provide debris drop-off sites for the public to help with the storm recovery. Next page, please. Public Works is dependable. Public Works' mission is to help protect our infrastructure and maintain it and keep it in good conditions. When those previously mentioned emergencies occurred, Public Works staff did not miss a beat. They continue to report in person every day to take care of business. Not only did the staff provide support needed to mitigate those emergencies, they also continue to perform their many regular duties, such as utility locates, meter repair, and pothole patching to ensure that the protection of the city's assets. Next page. Public Works is resilient. Public Works staff are flexible and willing to take on any task as needed. When the Toshman House deck needed reconstructing, staff made a plan, loaded up the lumber, and got to work to building a new sturdy deck. Whether they're rebuilding a roadside swell, cleaning catch basins, or applying asphalt patches, Public Works personnel are versatile and creative. Next page. Public Works is adaptable. Public Works provides a wide variety of services and are able to adjust to new conditions quickly. To continue providing the community with the opportunity to dispose of their large debris, staff modified the process of the bulky waste day event to keep everybody safe and also to be able to collect donations for the community. Early procurement of toilet paper, masks, and sanitizers have provided the city facilities with materials to keep the cities well stocked. Matt is looking a little overwhelmed by the amount of supplies he has there. And then using the appropriate equipment, we're able to perform maintenance and repairs activities with our in-house staff. We continue to implement innovative solutions to complete our work, such as using our asset management software to help track the costs related to both the COVID pandemic as well as the ice storm. Being able to efficiently collect the information for personnel, materials, and equipment costs for these events, it's been very helpful for the city to be successful in seeking reimbursement from the federal government. The City of Wilsonville Public Works Department is dedicated to providing quality service to the city in hopes that next year will not bring nearly as many challenges as we had this year. In closing, I want to mention we're celebrating National Public Works Week from May 16th to the 22nd. And in light of all the things that have happened in this past year, I think the theme of this year's Public Works Week, Stronger Together, is very fitting. Thank you.
Thank you. And she'll be available throughout the number portion here to answer any questions that I get stuck on. So we'll start with the administration. They had a starting budget of $863,000. We have our typical salary and adjustments of $17,000. One of the things that you'll see every once in a while throughout this presentation is last year, as part of the budget reductions that staff had recommended, is that we did not put money into the vehicle reserve for 1 year. So this year we're going back to rebuilding that reserve fund. So you'll see that has caused a variance, and then this particular account was $1,300. All told, we have a increase of $22,570 for an ending balance of $885,000. Any questions on the admin? Okay, hearing none. On to our facilities program. This one has started with a $1.2 million budget. We have salary adjustments. Once again, we see the reinstatement of the vehicle reserve. There's more vehicles in this particular department, plus they have some other equipment that is maintained by fleet, so that's a little bit larger than the last one. We have some adjustments on various accounts, total baseline change of $35,000 this fiscal year. We have also talked already about adding a new janitor position, $65,000. And this will be funded by the American Recovery Act for the first 2 years. With an ending proposed budget of $1,379,931. Questions? Not seeing any. For our roads budget, we started out with about $910,000, and you'll see that there were quite a bit of a reduction. The point they were trying, or the mark they were trying to do, is to reduce enough of their materials and expenses to be able to switch to a added position of the 3/4 time seasonal worker. So they were able to reduce their baseline charges by about $46,000 and adding in another $62,000 for a new position, and 3/4 time. Ending balance of proposed budget of $925,830. Our street lighting budget, this has no personnel. This is just the street lighting utility costs. It starts out with a $381,000, some increases in the utilities, a little offset with some of the other miscellaneous line items of the budget. Total increase of $2,710 with a proposed budget of $384,030. Okay. Water distribution. This is the part of the water team that actually maintains the water lines and does all the exercising of the meters and all of those good things. We started out with $1,550,000. We do have an increase in bank fees of about $4,000. For those of you who have been on this budget committee for a while, you'll know that that is lower than normal. So I think we've kind of gotten to the point where we understand the charges. The good news is that we have recently signed a contract with a new merchant provider, which when we go live with our utility billing next year, we really should see a pretty good drop in these charges. They have a different rate program, and I think it'll be better off than the one that we have currently. We are increasing some of the utilities just to kind of match what we do historically. When we start the budget process, we provide each program with the annual 3-year average of what they've actually spent for every line item. And also the budget, the annual 3-year average of what they've been budgeting. So they can tell right off if they've been budgeting too high, and we're starting to see people actually use that information and start reducing some of the lines that have historically been overcharged. Big change in this particular program is adding the dues for the Regional Water Consortium of $16,000. So total change is $28,000, ending budget of $1,578,978. For our water treatment plant, this is a contracted employees. This is with our Veolia team. They have a beginning budget of about $3.9 million. We do have an increase in supplies of $45,000 for our GAC filters. Those are our granulated
Activated
carbon filters. I should know that by now, that are used in the filtering system at the plant. We have about a $20,000 increase into the actual contract with Veolia. We do see an increase in electrical costs over the next year, about $39,000. We do have removal of one-time items that were budgeted last year and not rebudgeted this year. So we're actually seeing a reduction of about $60,000 in this budget, down to $3,835,711.
So on those GAC filters, what percentage of those are replaced every year?
We replace the GAC filters every other year. There's 4 of them, so we'll replace 2, and then the following 2 years replace 2. So each filter is switched out on a 4-year cycle.
It seems like a lot sooner than that.
That's because it's every 2 years, but there's 4.
And then we have our water pretreatment plant program. It starts out with $118,000 and a budget, slight change of up to $636. So it'll be an ending balance budget of $118,923. With our wastewater treatment, this is also contracted with Jacobs?
Yes.
Used to be CH2M Hill. They have a beginning budget of $3 million. Last year we had to do, as part of our contractual agreement, we had to do some repair work. So mid-year we added those costs in through a supplemental budget adjustment. We've taken them out now, so that's why this is a reduction, because we're not rebudgeting the repairs that we were required to do last year. Also, increase in our electrical costs. We are doing some more of the contractual repairs, and we're recording that correctly down in the capital outlay line. In total, we have an increase of $9,000. Bringing the proposed budget to $3,074,746. Our wastewater collection, oh, yes.
Question, Mayor Fitzgerald?
Thank you. It was, again, about a few sentences ago. Why did the electricity cost go up so much?
We're just seeing that across the board, whether it's probably a combination that we didn't, it's coming in higher this year than we had anticipated. So it kind of makes it even more bigger this year, but just the electricity costs have been increasing on all of our programs.
So one thing to note, though, the way that our wastewater treatment plant contract is written is Jacobs is held to a set kilowatt hour usage per year. And if they exceed that kilowatt hour usage per year, then they rebate back to the city. However, in our budget, we have to accommodate for what they might potentially use.
Okay, thank you.
With our wastewater collection, we have a beginning budget of just over $1 million. The big, this is another one of those complicated ones. During this fiscal year, the decision was made to purchase TV equipment versus having outsourcing it. So what we did is that we took available budget from materials and services and changed and, through a budget adjustment, put it down into capital outlay so that we could buy the equipment. Well, now we need to go back to our regular, line item of expenses, and it looks like we're adding $43,000, but what we're doing is just going back to our standard level of service. We also have a fleet adjustment of about $3,900. total additional will be $63,751. And they are sharing in the purchase of a single axle vacuum jetting truck. And from what I can understand, this is like the Cinderella slipper. We have one that, or maybe it's the three bears in the bed. We had one that was too big and we have one that is too small, but this is supposed to be the perfect size truck to let our staff clean out the different things that they need to be able to get into. And we're removing one time.
Member LaGarza.
Thank you. Just a quick question related to that Cinderella axle vacuum jetting truck. I noticed that it looks like we're reducing a vac operator this year. So is that tied to the type of vehicle that maybe I was just looking at the full-time equivalent, your personnel numbers, and it appears like we had one vac operator and this year we don't have a vac operator.
Oh, okay. So actually it's a title change. So we had a vector operator, but now we are using, I believe it's a utility technician. So we swapped positions because we're looking for somebody with higher skill level.
Perfect. Thank you.
So overall, the budget is increasing about $121,000, ending with a proposed budget of $1,216,011. And we have our stormwater fund. It has about a $1.1 million beginning budget. We do have some increase repair and maintenance as additional work is needed to keep up with the aging infrastructure that we have in numerous parts throughout the city. We have a total baseline change of about $28,000. They are also putting in a portion of the money for the single axle truck, jetting truck. Removing last year's capital item. My mind is already on vacation here. Bringing our ad package total to about $56,000 for a proposed budget of $1,168,706. And that is our Public Works presentation. And the presentations that we have prepared for tonight. It looks like we have a question.
Member LaGarza?
Thank you. I apologize. I just wanted to, back on the water distribution section, I wanted to ask, I was curious about the Regional Water Consortium and what is that a new membership for us? And then maybe a little bit about that or what that might entail or.
Sure. So the Regional Water Provider Consortium is made up of all the various water providers. So City of Portland, Tualatin Valley Water District, Tigard, Sherwood, Hillsborough, Beaverton, all the Portland metro area. The city was a member of the consortium for many years, and then there was a period in which their goals were not really aligning with ours, so we resigned our membership. But now we are seeing that they're changing more. They still do water conservation, which is very important because there are certain tasks that every city needs to meet to show the state we are doing water conservation. But the consortium is really starting to focus more and more on emergency preparedness, which is huge, as you can see time and time again. And so we felt it was the right time for us to rejoin the group. And so they have conservation discussions, they have emergency preparedness discussions, and just anything and everything that related to water in the Portland metro area. It's these agencies get together and share their knowledge and expertise. If they have training, we can participate in that. It's just, I think, a very good investment for the city to be part of that group.
Great, thank you.
And I just wanted to add, Delora, that your professional recognition and being the best public works manager in the entire universe. I think that only says something.
It does.
Yeah,
Thank you.
But not only does it say about you personally in the work that you've done for the city, but I also think it just also shows everyone in the city that our staff is focused on what's best for the city. I say that all the time to my friends and neighbors that live in the Wilsonville area. This city is the best run city that I've ever lived in, and I love living here. So just you personally being acknowledged for that, and I just applaud your efforts.
Thank you. I couldn't do it without the support of my staff and the rest of the city members, so, yeah.
Member O'Neill.
Yeah, I just want to echo those comments, Ms. Kerber, but there's something that's profound that I haven't had an opportunity to say to the city, Mr. Cosgrove. During COVID-19, the ice storm, a lot of the things that were considered abnormal for us, you know, homeschooling, stuck at home, learning Zoom, enjoying wearing sweatpants. One of the things that I really came to appreciate is the extent of normalcy that the city tried to communicate during this crisis. So my wife and I and my son were walking down the street. We saw Public Works out there. During the ice storm, trees fallen, I saw Public Works out there. For I would have said this to Mr. Brashear's team at the time, I thought this would be appropriate at this point, to see SMART out there, to see normalcy. So you turn to your child who's concerned about what's going on in the world, and we see the city still operating. We see it functioning. We see the support that should be there during this time. And that goes to the great leadership of Mr. Cosgrove, Ms. Kerber, Mr. Brashear. But of all the things I can complain about, and a lot of you have heard me complain, normalcy was key and a key win, and you should be proud of it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for those comments. So that is our presentation for this evening. Hopefully it wasn't too painful. Doesn't look like anybody fell asleep, so that's always a good thing on budget night. I will turn this back over to our...
I guess Mr. Cosgrove would like to speak.
Thank you, Chair Carr. I just wanted to thank our elected officials and budget committee members who sent questions in. It really allows us to do a deep dive on those questions and give you a thoughtful response. And I would encourage you, as we think about what's coming up in the next budget, if you have questions, to continue to do that, because we share all those responses with everybody on the budget committee. So thank you for your kind comments about staff tonight, and thank you for getting those questions into us. We really appreciate it. It makes our jobs a lot easier. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I will now say the 2021-2022 Budget Committee meeting is recessed at 8:14 p.m. for continuation tomorrow, May 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. with the public record left open. How's that? And I think you can all go.